Live, guys. I'm doing
It's
it.
5, 4,
The views and opinions
3,
expressed on the social
2,
Oh, I
distancing
feel so
show.
bad. Y'all were doing
1,
all those comments on the
0.
side, Aaron. Sandy. I said
And
Aaron,
we're
Alex.
and we're live. What
It was really Cade. It was
are you
Cade because
referring to the Instagram post? Because I'm pretty sure that is the show is definitely part of the show. So I'm just letting you know that.
Listen here right now, okay? 2/3 of this show are okay with pineapple on their pizza.
yes,
I
I
And
would
know.
venture to say even more.
hey, he just went rogue on that. I mean, he just was like, it doesn't
Yeah,
belong. I'm like, what?
I don't know
he
what you're
doesn't speak
talking
for all
about.
of us. Everyone, if you go to
No,
Instagram, know that
absolutely I do.
he has
Yes.
like 99.99999% control over that, and so he doesn't speak for all of us here.
And so there is
So
a disclosure. You agree on
no,
that post.
no. I deleted that comment just to make sure that people
I
knew.
reposted it just in case you didn't.
We're gonna flood it now to make sure that everyone knows that pineapples are okay on pizza. Okay,
But what did you think of that pineapple picture?
Oh my gosh, it was the cutest thing ever.
it was stinking adorable.
Right.
I couldn't help but think. I looked at it and I was like, it looks so fake, but it looks so cute fake.
I
Because
know, right? I
that
was
little
like,
thing.
Can you
Like,
share it so everybody can see? They're
oh,
probably like, what are y'all even talking about, fools?
do you have a joke? Can you pull it up?
I mean, let me just call an audible right here.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
fine.
What?
All right, I'll let
Throw,
him do it then. But
I'm
yeah,
looking
so
for it.
I'm like, does this thing just keep growing? Like,
Where did I put
is it gonna fall and tip over? I gotta be honest, guys. As much as I love pineapples, I had never seen a pineapple in its natural habitat.
Well, I thought they were like a root vegetable, like you pull it out from its thingy. That's what I thought.
It would make sense to me, like it comes out the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that thing looks like as soon as it gets big enough, it's just gonna topple over and break the bamboo stick it's on.
Right?
So let's see if I can. There we go.
Y'all, look at this baby pineapple.
It's the coolest thing ever.
And
Look
we'd like
at
to
that.
give our shout out to the plant Google Vikram for sending that to us.
Oh, that's gonna be my pick.
That. It's so cute.
That's gonna be my picture up here tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Totally.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, so y'all see what we're talking about though? Like,
wait,
does it
sorry.
just keep? Sorry. So does it just keep growing, and then it adds another layer at the bottom until it gets tall enough, and then it just falls down when it's done?
I mean, I feel it because they're heavy. So is the plant eventually?
Yeah.
You know,
That's
I think
plant Google guy. We're gonna have to have you do a field report on that pineapple. You got to record
Right.
you and the pineapple, and give us the rundown of how pineapples grow, and then when they know they're ripe. Okay.
I think
like
it grows
2 months?
like it swells, right? And then, but I think they actually have to chop them off. I don't think it actually like tilts over. I don't. But you know what do I know? I'm.
Yeah, I
we'll have to
know.
ask Plant
Yeah,
Google, so.
you're not Bikram,
You don't speak for every plant Google guy.
right?
Well,
Telling us what you
I
think.
try. I try.
Yeah, you do.
I will definitely put up something, whether or not it's true or not.
Right.
I'm going to definitely say something about it.
See, I
So
feel
the-
like it's the other way. I feel like you won't put anything, but if we do, you'll be happy to poke holes in
Oh
it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the leaves actually turn purple whenever the pineapple is ready. So
I
just
heard
wanted
that,
to let y'all
Google.
know.
Quick, quick, real quick. Y'all hear that? It was like,
It was like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Y'all don't even know. Y'all don't
yeah.
even
We
know.
don't know. We don't know. So,
So
Sandy, how was your day?
No.
Booyah!
I wanted to ask. God dang it.
y'all were gonna ask me the business of the day.
Oh,
Yes,
Aw.
we were going to do that first.
that's right. So, Sandy, what's the business of the day today?
So today I'm bringing you something special, guys. Y'all remember our past guest, Brianna.
Yes.
She made an announcement today. She said, "Hello, friends. I appreciate you following me and supporting my passion to create. I'm launching some fun stuff on Monday, July 6th, July 6th at 12 p.m. Central Time. I'll be hinting some sneak peeks throughout this week. I have so much planned for this page, and I'm excited that you have decided to come along with this journey. So please go to Instagram and follow Bri, BRI _ Creative Co. So I'm going to say that one more time. Bri
Writing it.
_ Creative Co.
All one word, right? Creative Co.
Yeah. And isn't that so cool? Bri Creative.
What? She's so
mean-
creative.
I mean, I was like, girl, we are going to be following your page.
Oh, I should have
Please
put
go over there and give her
Theo.
some likes. Because y'all know this girl's got some talent. And y'all are going to need some of her.
That girl got
She
talent.
does have talent. She's good.
That girl,
That
got
girl
some-
good.
She got some
She
talent.
good. So how was your day again, Sandy?
So my day was great, okay? I had shrimp and pineapples
Holla!
for lunch. Don't be making that face, Joe. Let me just show y'all this picture.
Te va a dar un cachetada.
I know that's right.
So one of them I don't like, and the other one will kill me. So I'm gonna continue making this face.
Anywho, and
Moving
then,
on.
and
Remember,
then-
everyone invited a party pooper. That's why we got him on the show.
And then for dessert after lunch, after dinner tonight, we went
Mm-hmm.
to Dairy Queen because they now offer non-dairy dilly bars.
Hush your mouth.
Yes.
Sweet.
Hold on, I'm sharing it.
I
Give
was
me a
like, are you
second.
putting them up? Or do you
Yeah,
want me
I
to-
got it right
Okay.
there. Dang, Sandy, that looks good.
Yes. So good. So good.
Whoa. Snap.
Yes.
Um,
That's what my buddy Eric, if you're watching tonight, snap. That's how he used to do it.
I don't know about all that pineapple stuff there.
So rude.
Non-dairy dilly bar.
No
Yes.
way. That is
So
awesome.
we can now participate with the
With the-
dilly bars.
So that's so weird. What is it if it's not dairy? Is it protein or what?
What do you mean? It's coconut.
Oh, so they use coconut milk instead of
Yes.
like
Coconut
Oh.
instead of.
But coconut milk is really like water, right?
You can milk a coconut apparently.
You
I
can
don't
milk a cow too.
I don't
That's
understand.
right, girl. And almonds or almonds.
What was that? What was that movie where he said? Oh, never mind. It's inappropriate.
It's not PG-13.
It's not
Right.
PG-13.
Carry on.
But listen, those fajitas are all the bomb right there.
Man, they were so good. And then
Oh.
I took a picture of my beans and rice. And then
You did send one?
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I ate those quicker. But anyway, so my day revolved around food.
That's nice. Nice.
That's nice. That's
What-
nice.
What about you, Joe? How was your day?
So my day was it was okay. It wasn't too bad. But I got in a nap.
No wonder you're
I was running a little behind.
We were one. I told you,
So-
Sandy. I told you.
But look at me. I'm like ready to rock and roll. See, because I am a professional nap taker.
Uh-huh.
Hashtag nap together 6 foot apart. And I'm just like, boom, ready to move. Oh crap, I almost knocked over my water, sorry.
Right.
And
So
like,
excited.
I'm so excited, so excited. Let's go, let's go.
Jazz
Yeah.
hands.
Jazz hands. No, it's
Don't do that
good.
again.
So, oh, sorry. Anyways, it's great. It's been good. We've got a little party going on right now. So if you start hearing some laughter or going on or anything like that, it's in the other room.
Oh, Jet's birthday.
Yes, and so I'll be yelling at him.
Okay. If he doesn't come on the show and bring all his other friends around and be like,
Right.
"Look, guys, it's my dad's show."
Right, exactly. Yes, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
How was your day, sir?
My day was okay. It was okay.
I want to hear all about it.
I can't share all about it though, but it was really okay. I'll tell you on the after show. Maybe I'll even share on Friday. Maybe not. Who knows? But know that it was okay. What else?
You're really excited about an okay day.
I am very excited about it. Okay. I opened up my little pineapple scenty thing that y'all can't see, but it's up
Yeah.
here. And this smell is really good. Let me tell
Is
you.
it?
Yes.
It's for your car.
Oh, is that where it goes?
Yeah, it's for your
Yes,
car. It
that's
hangs
Okay.
where it goes, yes.
I keep opening it down here for a little bit and then I'll close it because then it can get the air around and I'm like, pink sugar type. I like that.
It probably serves a better purpose right there anyway. So
Yeah, it does. A little close to home.
that way
So
you can,
anyway.
like, put it in the show every time.
So yeah, anyway, there was that and I'm really excited about our guest tonight.
Yes, I'm ready.
Hey, Jamie.
Yeah.
Who do we have on the show tonight?
I'm so glad you asked, Joe. So tonight, if you'll remember last week, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? We had who's the guy from New York again, Joe? Our
Trevor.
buddy from Trevor.
Trevor.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm.
Cute
Trevor said he-
Trevor.
cute Trevor, handsome Trevor, not cute, handsome Trevor.
Yeah.
He asked for our topic to be overcoming. I don't remember exactly how you said it, but essentially it was like overcoming obstacles, right?
Or an adversity. Overcoming
Or an adversity.
Yes.
I immediately thought of a close friend up here in Illinois that I thought would be perfect for this because, guys, she has a story to share. She has a story to share. I'm not going to reveal too much because I want her to share, but let me tell you, the impact that this story leaves people, including myself, I got to tell you, it's monumental because it's one of those where you're like, there's no possible way this happened to someone and where they're at today it can't match up. But she is a miracle patient on the hurdles that she's had to overcome and continues overcoming. She's a source of amazement. Like you look at this, you look at her story, and it's just like, what in the world? Like she brings hope to so many different people, to so many different causes. She has a story to tell. I could keep going on, so I'm going to stop.
Yes,
Everyone, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. Her name is Erin Rollins.
Yay!
Hi, Erin. Welcome.
Welcome.
Me?
Let me get the clapping going.
Thanks, Erin. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. I took a nap as well. Just feeling
Oh
tired.
yeah. Hashtag nap together 6 foot
Gotta
apart.
get those naps in,
Exactly. What is the world coming to when you can't get your nap in?
I
I don't.
I mean, it's just funny to contrast that when I was a little girl and I literally hated naps.
Right.
And then I got older and I was like, what was wrong with me? Because I was for a nap.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. They are a treasure amongst the day. When you can find your nap time, man, I'm telling you, it'll change your life.
Power nap in, you're good to
Right.
go.
Exactly.
So, Erin, I have had the pleasure of meeting you and have hung out with you a little bit up here. You married a good buddy of mine. And so I know a little bit about you, but why don't you tell everyone else just a little bit about yourself before we get into your story?
So, in general, I am a lover of life. I would consider myself very bubbly, adventurous. I love to be active. I'm obsessed with green tea matcha lattes from Starbucks. It's become a full-on addiction, just have to admit that. I have 2 little gremlins. One is named Gizmo, and he looks just like a gremlin. And Kingston is the second one. I have a bachelor's in nonfiction creative writing and a master's in health and science journalism. I love art. I love all things art. Like we were talking about creativity earlier in the show. I did follow her account, by the way.
Oh, thank
Aw.
you.
Nice.
But yeah, I love art. I love to be creative. I love to dance. I love to sing. I love to write. I love a lot of things. That's my problem. That's probably my
That's not a problem. That's a good problem. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Right.
You just
So,
gotta learn to prioritize your time. That's what I'm constantly trying to figure out in my life. How to prioritize.
so I don't know if I told you this, but Joe is actually our resident professional photographer.
Oh,
And
nice.
he has some good looking photographs that he's taken. So
I just have
definitely,
a fancy camera. That's what everybody
it's called an
says.
iPhone.
iPhone
Right,
11 Pro.
exactly. Let me tell you how to insult the photographer. Tell him that he has a fancy camera.
Yeah.
That's how you insult the photographer.
So I just wanted to let Diane Macy know that yes, the show has started.
Yeah, that's my mother.
Oh.
Oh, hi, Mom.
Mama Nancy. Hi, Mama.
And one of our top fans says, "Hi, Erin. Your wilderness is enchanting."
Oh, hi. My brother-in-law actually shot this picture, and he put it together like, I don't know what you call it in the photographer world, but what do you call it?
Mural.
It's a mural, but yeah, you like overlay hundreds of images to get
Okay.
one product.
Nice.
And are those little fireflies then?
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
You saw the firefly, Sandy?
Yes, girl, look.
I can't tell any. I mean, I can see a dark
So the yellow
thing.
behind me, those
Yeah.
are fireflies that he.
Oh,
Oh yeah, he took hundreds of photos of the same thing in the forest near our house. Coincidentally, where we had our wedding photography done as well. Dennis and
Perfect.
my husband.
So, yeah, it's called multi-exposure. So they take
Yeah.
several pictures and
got
they Photoshop them all together. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Joe,
Let-
you've never done that for our forest.
I know that's right.
Well, see, what had happened was we don't have a forest.
Oh, that would make sense. That would make sense. Never mind.
We also don't have fireflies, man.
Oh,
The very
Yeah,
first time
yeah.
I saw fireflies in Chicago, I was like utterly amazed. I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's fireflies!" Like I stood and sat there, and my wife was like, "What are you doing? There's fireflies! I have to take photos of fireflies." And of course, back then I didn't have the proper equipment. My equipment
only an
wasn't as
iPhone
good.
6,
Yeah,
girl.
so
iPhone
Yeah.
it was. I didn't like those pictures.
well, awesome. Okay, so thanks for helping everyone get to know you a little bit better, Erin. So now to the meat and potatoes here. Okay, you heard us say earlier that we had a previous guest say that we wanted to bring someone who's overcome obstacles and obstacles. Thank you, Joe. Anniversaries, obstacles and anniversaries, right?
Yes.
And
No,
so
that's not right.
and so that's why I thought of you. And I was hoping that you felt like your story might fit into this category too.
I'm grateful that you asked me. I love sharing my story.
Awesome.
It definitely helps me because it is quite a story. And it's still ongoing, which is something you said you wanted. It's not over. So I just want people to know that. So I was thinking through where to start. And the thought that I had was that I'm very active in my faith. And so one of the things I love to do is I love to pray. And the year actually of 2014, I adopted Gizmo. I think it was May 5th we adopted him. I was living with my parents at the time. I just started kind of a full-time gig that I was hoping would turn. It was a temp job, hoping I would turn full-time. And they were just about to give me an offer for the job I was doing. So I was doing working on an engineering magazine as a digital editor. So I managed everything online. And I had just written a story for the food magazine, which, you know, I studied health and science journalism. And that's really my passion is food and health and wellness. And I would take Gizmo on walks every day. And I was just thinking through my life. I was 29 at the time. And like I said, I was living at home with my parents. And earlier that year, I had broken up with my last boyfriend and was just trying to figure out where is life taking me. And I was very hopeful, but I was also a little, I don't want to say frustrated, but just trying to figure it out. Like there has to be more to life, you know, like where am I going? I was trying to get the career and the guy and, you know, work on my blog. I blog for Chicago Now. It's called God Sends Me Hearts. And so I would go on prayer walks every day with Gizmo and I would ask God these questions like, and I would just pour my heart out to him, what I was going through. And a different guy from a church that I'm a part of, we have different regions around the country. And I was set up with a different brother, we would call him. And we started talking. And so I was praying through these things. And I also started listening to a lot of a preacher named Francis Chan. And I really like the way he preaches, because I feel like he really charges people to not necessarily follow a certain ideology with regard to like a church, but to really follow the Bible. And his question was, when was the last time you got on your knees and begged for someone's soul? And that really cut me to the heart, because here I was thinking about all the things that I wanted to meet my needs, you know, a house, a job, a husband, future kids. Not that there's anything wrong with those things, but it was all kind of selfishly motivated. Mm-hmm. And so I started praying and I said, God, what is it going to take for, and I had a list of things to happen. And the first thing was for my closest friend in the world. I've been best friends with her since I was 14, and our other mutual friends. So we're like the three musketeers. And she had, you know, found her faith and kind of lost it. And I wasn't upset that she left our church, just more so saddened that she had kind of forsaken her relationship with God, I guess you could say. So I was like, all right, God, what is it going to take for her to find you again? You know, what is it going to take for my dad, who's in his mid-70s, who taught me to believe in Jesus Christ, to, you know, have a relationship with you? What is it going to take for me to meet this man that you have planned for me, who I hope will want to serve the poor with me? Like, let me think more outside of myself and not just about how I can meet all of these needs or wants that I have. And the last prayer that I prayed was, you know, what is going to take for me to have an impact with my life? Like, what is my main purpose in this life? Like, if I were to die tomorrow, you know, what would people say about me? How did I impact other people? How did I bring hope or joy or, you know, whatever to the world? And so I would pray these prayers, among other things, for like 7 months. And on November 7th, 2014, I was walking Gizmo like any other day. I'd take him for a walk before work, after work, sometimes at lunch if I worked from home before bed. And I literally heard God tell me, Erin, like he stopped me in my tracks, and it was like he was standing next to me and he said, Erin, it's going to take something tragic. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, what? Like, it was so plain as day. It was so just like a big burly man standing next to me being like, okay, you've been talking to me for 7 months and I haven't said anything, and here you go. And immediately I knew, like, okay, well, I have to surrender to this. I can't just knock on the door and be like, God, answer me, answer me, answer me. And then when he opens the door and says, this is what it's going to take, be like, I don't like that answer.
Never mind.
See you later.
Keep scrolling.
And so I prayed probably the hardest prayer of my life. And I said, okay, God, do whatever you need to do. Just do not take my life. And 2 days later, I was driving home from a late movie with a friend. So many things that happened that day that could have changed, I think, the outcome. And I don't say that as if I have any regret at all. It's just crazy to me that one moment in time can change everything. And so we ended up going to a later movie. I was running late, as I usually do. It's definitely a fault of mine. I run late things.
No
And
women running late, unheard of.
right?
Really, Joe?
It's
You did went there.
porn. So she's like, you know what, Erin, I'm gonna exchange the tickets. Why don't we go to the 10:30 showing? So that put me on the road at 1 a.m. So I called my mom. She had left me a million voice messages because remember, I'm 29, live at home, and I still have my mom worried about me staying up all night to make sure I get home safely, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'm at the stoplight and I'm like, oh shoot, I have to call my mom. Like, I have to let her know that I'm not dead. So I call her and I'm like, yeah, I'll be home in 20. Well, I never made it home that night because a wrong way drunk driver hit me head on. And I don't have any recollection of the crash at all. My first memory actually was I woke up and they're wheeling me backwards into a one-person ambulance. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely and utterly claustrophobic. And that's because they had to cut me out of my car using the jaws of life. And immediately I lost consciousness. I don't know how long I was out for. So I have this issue with suffocation now because I was passed out into my airbag and I like literally could not breathe. And so just to give you a picture of what that looked like on impact, they basically told me that the paramedic, the doctors, everyone was like, it's a miracle you're alive. Like, people don't survive crashes like this. And so I did get to interview the state trooper because we are working on a documentary about my story, which, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about later. But he said, you know, in my 17 years of being an officer, a state trooper, he's like, your crashes was one of the worst I've ever seen. Oh. And usually we have a term when we walk onto the site. He said, I literally thought it was a double fatal because it was so bad. I thought both of you had died. And he's like, I was so happy and ecstatic that you were alive. He's like, I was so angry for you because I knew that this person who made this ridiculous decision to drive drunk didn't even realize she was driving. Like, when they pulled her out of her car, she was so drunk, she didn't even realize that she had even come from the bar. Like, she had no recollection of anything. And he was basically like, I felt like she ruined your life. Like, you were 29, the cusp of your career, like young. And so basically at that moment, I was paralyzed from the waist down. I had holes in my bowels, colon, and small intestine, which is internal. So that would have caused like sepsis had they not operated right away. I had a severed iliac artery, so I was bleeding internally. So even though on the outside I woke up and I was lucid, I was dying. I was, you know, I had life-threatening injuries that they told the reporters were non-life-threatening because they didn't know there was no blood that they could see, right? I had 3 broken ribs. I had a really severe concussion, fractured sternum, lacerated liver. My right foot, I assume I slammed on the brakes because if you think about your calcaneus, your heel bone, it was like all the way up into my ankle. So, and it was fractured like in 3 places. So when you're paralyzed, you lose function of your lower half. Well, at least from the waist down. And so my foot was hanging like this.
Oh my gosh.
And they call it drop foot because you have no ability to lift your foot up anymore. And so immediately they, took me to the ER, and I was there alone. And there's so much I could go into details about that, but I'll just say that for hours I was in the ER alone because there was miscommunication about my parents coming and whether I gave permission. And so that was probably the most horrifying moments of my life, where I'm there alone, I'm basically dying, and I have no one with me, and I'm in and out of consciousness. So it gets even crazier. I wake up, so I'm in and out of consciousness. I wake up in the ambulance, and then I tell the paramedic, who tells me, "You're lucky to be alive." I tell him, "Oh my gosh, why is this ambulance so small?" That's like basically all I could utter in those moments of excruciating pain. And then I was like, I'm in so much pain. I'm in so much pain. I'm in so much pain. Well, then it goes black. The next memory I have is there's like a billion hospital staff around me, touching me, poking me. There's no time to even ask me, about if it's okay. They're just like, "We have to save your life. We're doing this. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to hurt. It's going to whatever." I didn't feel anything below the waist, like nothing. They're like, "We're going to put a catheter in. It's going to feel really uncomfortable." I'm thinking, oh, I must be really drugged up because I don't feel a thing. And then they're taking me for all these tests. And I'm literally like screaming bloody murder because I feel like my body has been sawed in half, and I'm begging them to stop moving me because they have to blow up like this, like almost like an inner tube, and put it underneath you, because if they move you at all, they could permanently paralyze you. Like if you're not already completely and permanently paralyzed, because there's some intervention depending on how severe the injury is that they can do surgically or whatever. And so then I wake up again. I pass out. I wake up, and the state trooper is standing at the end of the gurney staring at me. I have never been in trouble in my entire life. And let me just say, waking up to a state trooper staring at you is terrifying. And I was like, I can't really move. I'm kind of locked into this bed, and I can't move my lower half. And all I could do was like pull my head back. And I remember he's like, "So, well, tell me your name." And then he's like, "Miss Massey," which is my maiden name. He's like, "Do you know what happened?" And I was just like, I can't even talk, and I don't have the energy to say anything. So I just shook my head no. And he said, "I'm so sorry, Miss Massey, but you were hit head on by a wrong way drunk driver. You're lucky to be alive." And I'm like, okay, why do they keep saying this? I guess it must be true. Like, it just didn't feel real. Nothing I was going through felt real, honestly. It felt like I was dreaming, or I was in another dimension. And then he walks over 2 feet to, there was this curtain drawn in the ER. So basically there was, 2 beds. And I'd heard this girl moaning. And as I was moaning, because you're in so much pain, you're moaning, it feels like you're not even in your body, that you're out of your body. So you hear like multiple sounds coming from yourself and from someone else. And so all I could think about was, oh my gosh, I wonder what happened to this person, If this horrible thing happened to me and this doesn't feel real, I'm still trying to grasp it. I wonder what happened to her. Well, he walks over to that woman who I had glanced over at, and he starts lecturing her, and he tells her, "Look to the woman to your right. That's the woman you hit."
Oh.
So now I'm putting together like, oh my gosh, I was almost killed. And the person who almost killed me, not intentionally by any means, but still it's extremely traumatic, is laying right next to me. Like, what? So my brain just turned off. It was like, I can't handle anymore. I'm alone. There's no one with me. I'm in so much pain. Like, I'm done. So I don't remember a thing after that about her. So my family was finally able to come 3 hours later, and they heard everything from that side of the room. And I don't think she even realized, because she was about twice the legal limit. And so I think the state trooper was trying to get it across to her, like, do you realize what you did, And the 2 surgeons come in. There was 2 different teams, trauma and neurosurgery, that were pretty much on deck. And they were discussing about which surgery to do first. So there was 2 emergency surgeries. There was the leaking organs that would basically turn into sepsis within hours and kill me. And the blood, right? The leaking iliac artery, which, you could bleed out and die. So there was that. And then there was, okay, well, her spine is shattered. Basically my L5 and my S4, so my butt bone, which I find kind of funny now, basically I broke my butt. Like, that's the funny part. Not that it actually happened. The fact that I can tell people that I broke my butt. So So that basically shattered, exploded. And so my entire spinal canal was filled with bone. So remember how I was saying that if you move someone even an inch, you can paralyze them for life? We're talking one shard of bone. I had so much bone in my spinal canal that the surgeon said it was like completely full. And he said that my injury was so horrific and so unique that it would be in like the 0.01 percentile. So I requested all of my medical records, and I was telling Jaime this yesterday, and I went and was looking through the surgery reports, because they ended up doing the sepsis surgeries first. I'm sorry, to prevent sepsis. They did that surgery first, and that took about 7.5 hours, and they saved my life. And they, I have a scar from the iliac artery, and then they cut me from like basically the chest down to my vagina. I don't know if that's acceptable. Say the truth.
Yeah.
Medical terminology, people. Maybe parts. And so they did a full laparotomy, and then they wanted to do a spinal surgery the next day, but I was I was not stable. And so my family was immediately like, okay, so let me get this straight. She almost died. We put her through a 7.5 hour surgery that saved her life, and you want to flip her over like a pancake tomorrow to do an 8 to 12 hour surgery on her spine? I don't think so. So my mom called my aunt, who is best friends with, he retired now, but a former neurosurgeon at a different hospital, who coincidentally had privileges at the hospital I was taken to, and asked him to, they forwarded all my information, and she basically said, like, called him in the middle of the night, was like, this is my niece, you need to look at her records, like, they want to do surgery, we don't want them to do surgery, can you help us, like, blah blah blah. And so he got back to her right away, and he came literally the next day and was like, we're taking over, and they transferred me to the next hospital. So I did not have surgery on my spine for 72 hours.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
When you think about a spine that has shards of bone and that's severely compressed, you have a window. You have about 8 to 24 hours, they say, to decompress the spine, and maybe there'll be some function that you can have restored. My surgeon has assured me that my injury was so horrific that it wouldn't have mattered, and that basically, had they not waited the 72 hours, I was not stable enough, I probably would have died on the table. Like, he's never directly said that to me, but that's basically what he's implying.
Right.
He basically said you needed to stabilize overnight. The first 24 hours is extremely critical, which is why we weren't okay with putting you into the OR, because remember, if someone's under for a certain amount of time as well, the medication alone, it's traumatic to the body. So anyways, during that surgery, they stabilized the spine. So basically from L2 to S5, that's a lot of vertebrae, they fused. They decompressed. So the spine ends between L2 and L4, which is your lumbar spine. So you have your cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral. And the spinal cord ends between L2 and L4. My injury was basically between like L3 and L2. So, and then my rehab hospital classifies it as L4. But basically the nerves all the way up to L1 coming out of the cord were really damaged. The dura sac, which protects your nerves, was exploded basically. And the thecal sac also exploded. So it protects, it's like there's liquid inside. And so if you think about like underneath your spinal cord, the tip of it, you have a ponytail of nerves. And the spinal surgeon said that my nerves were like mangled like cooked spaghetti. They were so just entangled in one another. And there were shards of bone, remember, in the canal. So they have to spend hours fishing out these shards of bone. But if you fish out all of them, you have potential to accidentally sever a nerve because they're about the thickness of your hair. So he said we took out as many as we could, but some we would have to leave inside of you, which body is a miraculous thing. And after years of that, some of them, I think it's called reuptake, where your body absorbs them somehow, the bone, I don't know. And then it just goes somewhere. I don't think they're fully gone, but many of them are. So anyways, in the surgery, they do something called an EMG, which basically they're able to tell what parts of the body were affected, like from the signal perspective. So even function doesn't tell the whole story of what's going to be able to move in the future, right? So what they know is that I had very severe cauda equina syndrome because the cauda equina was extremely mangled. The conus medullaris, which is above the cauda equina, which would classify me as a higher injury, was also damaged. And then they weren't sure if the shards of bone nicked the tip of the cord, which would have made a central cord injury. So there was just all this stuff involved. And he basically told my family, he said, we don't know if she'll ever walk again. We don't know what kind of recovery she's going to have. It's really going to depend on her attitude. It's going to depend on so many factors, a great support system, the research shows. And then we just wait. And he came to me, and he's very upbeat. I love him. His name is Dr. Sobolski, and I'm just so grateful for him. I guess both surgeons were off that day, and they were called in. They were like, they had to come in on their off day to do surgery on me. So thank you for that. And he came into my room, and I remember he said, Erin, you're young, you're healthy, you're going to be fine. Well, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be fine. Like everything's it's going to work. It's just going to come back. It's just going to take some time. And unfortunately, that's not the case. But I will say that in the EMG, basically from the waist down, there was zero signal except for two of these really small muscle groups. So now you fast forward 5.5 years, I'm walking without assistance. I do have to wear a brace on my left foot. And my surgeon, Dr. Sobolski, and I also had Dr. Smith, who put in 2 rods, 10 screws, and 12 bolts. And that was to stabilize the spine because he said it would look like the Leaning Tower of Pisa if not. Basically, they call me this miracle patient because zero signal means zero signal, and like little signal to 2 little muscle groups does not equal you walking down the street without, crutches or without a walker or without being in a wheelchair. So I am walking. I still have bladder bowel dysfunction. So that's something that, unfortunately, with a spinal injury, there's no guarantee of recovery for that. But the interesting thing is 10 days after the initial surgery, I did become septic because the first surgery failed. So now I'm in the new hospital. They're monitoring me. It was November 18th. I remember I felt like I was literally dying. I remember my pain had been under control and then it wasn't. And I told the nurses that something terrible was happening. And they're like, well, your vitals are fine. You must be constipated. And I was like, you think? I haven't pooped in 10 days. Of course I'm constipated. Like, that's not what this is. Like, I'm dying. And I didn't eat all day. And I was just in so much pain. And my best friend was with me and was trying to get me to eat. And I wouldn't let her turn the lights on or open the blinds. And so the next day, somehow I was miraculously in a good mood. And I was talking to my friends who came to visit me that morning, and the trauma team comes in and they take my vitals, and it literally, okay, I'm obsessed with medical shows and even more so now, but it was literally like a Grey's Anatomy scene where it's super dramatic and you're like, does that even really happen? Well, it happened for me because they come in and there's like 6, there's like a lead intern and like 6 little ducklings behind her, right? And she's the lead intern because she's the only one that speaks. Like the other ones don't speak. And I offended probably a lot of them because Dr. Sobolski let me call him George. So they were just like, oh, how dare you call a surgeon by his first name? And I was like, no, I have special permission. I'm not being rude. Like, here I am demanding all these things. But anyways, that's a separate team. So the trauma team comes in. I remember this blonde girl, and she took my vitals and she was like, oh my gosh, it's her abdomen. We need to take her to the OR now, like now. And so within seconds, I'm waving to my friends goodbye because I'm going to the OR for this emergency surgery, not knowing what the heck is happening, just knowing that I was right to tell them that I was thinking.
Yeah, listen here.
This is not constipation. So they had to save my life a second time. And to save my life, they had to give me what's called a colostomy or a stoma. So usually in like trauma patients, a lot of times that they have abdominal trauma, they will give you a temporary colostomy that will last, maybe 3 to 6 months, depending on how well you heal. Because when you're sewing bowel together, the tissue, it's like sewing tissue paper together. So they already sewed it together and it fell apart. So the surgeon said that it was like crumbling in their hands. Like they didn't have anything to work with. Like my flesh was crumbling. I was already open 2 inches wide and 2 inches deep because I had such severe trauma and I was so swollen that you can't put sometimes the skin back together right away. So they had been packing me and unpacking me every day for 10 days. And it was the most uncomfortable and unreal experience. Like they were cauterizing dead skin every day, like with like a little, like what felt like
it's like a laser.
Tweezers, yeah. And they were, and then so I would just to distract myself, I would ask them for heating packs and ice packs. to put on my stomach because somehow that kind of helped it in a way.
Sure.
So anyways, they took me to surgery. I had 7.5 hours. The surgeon basically told my family halfway through there's complication. They needed to give me the ostomy. He did not want to do that because of my age and the emotional impact that would have on me. So I wake up from surgery. Remember, I have suffocation issues. I wake up. They had the tube down my throat, which I begged them never to put in me again, the intubation tube. And I had thrown up after my spinal surgery, and I couldn't talk. I had thrown up because I wasn't nauseous. They thought I was. But I guess my gag reflex kicked in, and I felt like I was choking because when you start to breathe, you have to work really hard because the machine's like forcing you to breathe, basically. So I remember hearing them talk about, oh, she's throwing up, she's nauseous, we have to leave it in. And I was like, no, hello, I can talk. Like, I'm here, I hear you. And I was just like, okay, God, seriously though, like you need to take over because no, this is not, I can't. And so a couple hours later, God answered my prayer and they took the tube out. Well, here I am with this tube down my throat. I was supposed to be sedated the whole night. They had tied my hands to the bed. So I wake up and I was so traumatized. But the thing that got me through was my sister was literally physically holding my hand like the entire night. And so I grabbed her arm and I start like, I don't know how she understood what in the world I was writing, but I start scribbling like as fast as I can in her arm. Because at this point I was just like, you know what? I'm not upset. Like I immediately when the crash happened and I was in the ambulance, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, my prayer. And I remember feeling grateful that God had given me a premonition because it gave me a purpose for this terrible thing that I was going through. And so when I woke up from the surgery, I just felt like for the first time, I felt completely and utterly broken. And I was just like, okay, God, you know what? I'm not mad, but like I have nothing left. So you need to like pull out all the stops here and like figure this out. And I woke up and you know, so I had all of that terrible experience in the middle of the night. And then I woke up and I remember my sister telling me about the colostomy, of which I'd never heard before. I never heard about a colostomy. I had no idea what it was. And now I have to get used to this thing, you know, on my body and get used to the idea of what this means for me, which is not really understandable when you're super high on morphine and morphine kind of numbs you. So I remember saying like, oh, I guess it's okay because it saved my life. Like, I guess I'll be all right, you know. But it was just a lot of bad news. And so a few hours later, my plastic surgeon, Dr. Damanian, comes in the room. He saunters in, writes on the board, you know, his website, and basically was like, so here's the deal. You're wide open. So instead of it just being 2 inches, it was like the size of a football. So they had to pack me. I looked pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
And they're like, we don't know if we can close you for 9 months. Because your flesh was crumbling, you're too swollen, and oh, if you don't walk in 9 months, then sayonara your chances of walking, because the sooner you get up and walk after a spinal cord injury, the better outcome you're going to have. So that's the worst piece of news, but we're going to go in there and we're going to try to do a surgery that we've never done before with a technique that I invented, and we'll try to close you. So I'm like, okay, great. Whatever. He's like, okay, but you have to be fever free for 5 days. So this was This was like Thursday to Sunday, and Monday they were going to attempt to do the surgery. So Sunday comes, you guys, my temperature, I got up to like 100.1, and they're like, okay, well, you have a little bit of a fever, like this has to drop. So my sister gets on Facebook. She's updating everyone. She's like, can you pray? Because Erin's fever needs to go away. And if it doesn't, that means she probably has more infection and they have to go back in her abdomen, which they don't want to do because you could have a microscopic bacteria in there. And the surgeon basically gave me a colostomy to avoid that because he said, because you may not survive, right? Like sepsis is very real. And I was hours away from my organs shutting down, like maybe minutes, you know, from dying. Like it happens that quickly. And within hours, my fever like went away completely. Cause that's like a low grade fever. It's not like an actual, you know, or whatever it was a low grade fever. And the next day we waited all day. And I told the surgeon, I said, look, I don't care how much pain I'm in, just like do whatever you can to put me back together. Like whatever you can do. And so I was like, all right, let's just pray. I'm like, if God can feed, or Jesus can feed like 5,000 people with like 2 loaves of bread, I think he can grant me some fascia on my stomach. Because Dr. Damani was very clear.
Amen.
And you don't have enough flesh to close, but if you have fascia, which is like between the muscle and the flesh, we can make it work. You just need enough fascia to safely close. So I was like, all right, God, miracle grow. Like, this is going to happen. Like, you can make this happen. So we're praying because he's like, look, we can get you on the table, but I can't guarantee that we won't have to take you off the table and that you won't wake up and we won't tell you the bad news. So I'm like, okay, God, whatever needs to happen, I need to wake up from the surgery and it needs to be done. So 4 hours later, I wake up. I was in so much pain, probably the most since the sepsis and since the crash. I remember just laying. So normally, typically, you're in post-op for like 2 hours. They try to get your pain down to a manageable level. I was in post-op for 4 hours. I was in and I have a very high pain tolerance, but I was in so much pain. The nurse was amazing. I don't remember his name, but I remember afterwards, he was like, okay, you're at a 7.5. I think we can bring you back to your room. He was like, I gave you double what I was supposed to. Like, normally I give a person this much, because he kept alternating between Dilaudid and morphine, Dilaudid and morphine. And I found out weirdly through this experience that I have a very high tolerance for pain medication. Like, I need, or not even just pain medication, like medication in general. When I was on, and then I developed pulmonary embolism, so they put me on blood thinners. I was on 14 milligrams and I had lost like 30 pounds. I was about 100 pounds in the hospital on 14 milligrams of warfarin, which is like unheard of for someone double my size and twice my age. It just doesn't happen. So anyways, I didn't feel so bad about him giving me double the pain medication because apparently my body was just not responding. So they were able to close me. And then I finally stabilized after 28 days in that hospital. And then they transferred me to inpatient rehab at RIC, which is now known as Shirley Rhinability Lab. And I spent the next 6 weeks learning how to ride around in my wheelchair, learning how to sit up, learning how to sit on the toilet, and learn how to cath myself.
Oh my God.
Learn how to change my colostomy and literally live an entirely different life. So like I said, walking was something that nobody was sure would even happen for me. Also because of my broken foot, they took a couple weeks when I got to rehab before I was even cleared to even put pressure on the right foot. So I had special boots and AFOs, which are ankle foot orthotics. And they had to hang me basically from the ceiling with a harness and walk with a walker. And every week they would, test me on a Thursday and say, Erin, do you think you could do this week? And I think I'm just have some weird intuitive understanding of my body, because the therapist would say, and I loved her, Jen was amazing, and all my other therapists, but she was my main PT. And they would say, Erin, do this today. And if I couldn't do it and I just knew, like, I would try, but I would just be like, better luck next time. I'll try, but I just intuitively knew what I was able to do. And I remember my therapist was just like, you're going to walk out of here, Erin. Like, you're going to be one of the few. You're going to walk out. And although I didn't actually walk out, I was able to walk, if that makes sense. Walker. And I tell my husband this all the time. I don't like when people baby me. And so I had a lot of moments where I could have been babied. So for example, the day I got out of rehab, I really wanted to go to the movies. And so my brother-in-law drives up to the movie theater to drop me off. And he takes out the wheelchair and I'm like, nope. Get my walker out. I'm walking to the theater. It took me like 20 minutes to walk to this theater, but I was determined to do it because I'm like, if I don't try, like, I'll be in this wheelchair forever. And I'm not comfortable with that. Not that there's anything wrong with being in the wheelchair, but I wanted to push myself and to see how far I could go. And so, so it's been about 5.5 years. I'm constantly researching and looking for things that could help me. I did recently find, miraculously, I'd found this 2 years ago, but a surgery called a nerve graft transfer. And basically they would take a graft of your working nerve. So I had to get another EMG, and I think there was like 12 nerves they tested. And remember, the first time they tested, like only 2 nerves were actually, there was signal. Now this time, like all but 4 were normal. There was 4 that were highly compromised. So he needs at least 2. So he's going to make a graft. He's going to cut open my leg, my calf, and move it to the tibial nerve. And there is potential that with my floppy feet, so I don't have full range of motion or full strength in my feet. I roll my ankles all the time. That's why I need the brace. And with an incomplete spinal injury, my left side is weaker. So there is a potential that in 6 months to 2 years, I could maybe regain full eversion. I could maybe regain better plantar flexion. It's pretty strong now, but like still compromised, if that makes sense. So when I walk, there's a slight gait issue where I pick up my foot and it goes in instead of going up in like in a neutral position. It kind of goes
So
up
like,
in.
like
So
that.
I'm able to dorsiflex. So that's another miracle, is that most spinal cord injury patients like will drag their feet. They don't have dorsiflexion. It comes back last. Well, my dorsiflexion came back first, but with a slight inversion. So I kind of like pull my foot in, right? But I wasn't able to plantar flex until after Dennis and I got married. And one day I was like, let me try on this counter, see if I can get off the floor. And I was able to get off the floor and like actually put weight on my toes. I'm used to falling backwards all the time. So that was crazy that the plantar flexors came back. So for a lot of spinal injury patients, like I'm the opposite. I had an orthotist intern basically like, you are not textbook at all. Can I see your feet? Like, can you show me like what your feet can do? Because this is confusing to me and I don't know why your feet are like this. So when it came to like AFOs, I wanted to get out of them quickly because they prevented me from even being able to do certain movements that were coming back, and they kind of did not help the movements I already had. So it just didn't make sense to keep them. Anyway, so I'm supposed to go to Texas in a couple weeks to get this nerve graft surgery. But the really cool thing that I was telling Jaime about also was I've done some research on a pudendal nerve transfer, which could potentially give me some function back in my bladder and bowel, but they've never done it on humans before. They've done it on canines with a lot of success. So I asked the surgeon if he'd be willing to try it, and he said, well, let's see how your feet go, and then we can try maybe. So I'm like, all right, I could be the first. That's fine.
So you've had a lot of firsts.
I mean, you're so brave. I'd have been like, don't cut me. No, we're good.
I'm kind of like you, Sandy. I'd have been like, do we really have to?
No, right.
No, her attitude is like, I'll be first.
I know.
Yeah, let's do it.
Erin, before we continue, I do want to. There's been a few comments who've just been come up, and I just kind of want to share them because they're encouraging for you and stuff.
Sorry,
No.
Awesome.
Don't apologize. Nothing to apologize for. So Dr. Pineapple says, Erin, your story is such an inspiration to all. You're such a blessing to those who know you.
Aww.
This was when you were starting your story. Carrie is, as many of us are just kind of like, what? Tim is in here. Tim is saying, love you, Erin. Love your story. A moment ago when you were sharing about the movies, he said, oh, you probably missed all the previews. Dr. Pineapple says, you said you have a weird intuition, but I think God has given you the gift of discernment.
Aww, I would agree with that.
And then Carrie, I was thinking the exact same thing.
Probably about us, like the surgery part. Like if you guys were like, don't cut me.
Oh,
and
okay,
she's probably saying, I would probably be the same.
I think she was talking about Dakisa's comment. She was thinking the same thing as Dakisa was.
Well, that sounds much more in line.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, go with that.
Yeah, because then Dakisa says, great minds. So, never mind.
Go with that. Don't listen to me. I'm just gonna be over here throwing stuff out. So
I do want to give a fair, not warning or whatever, but we're probably going to go over a little bit, guys. So just letting you know that now, okay?
Yeah, but So just deal with it.
So Erin, sorry, you were talking about the experiment. Not, I guess it wouldn't be experimental. First surgery.
I mean, if he's willing, he's done some stuff with the pudendal nerve, but it's different what I'm asking of him. So basically, the previous research, they're always trying to look for how to help someone empty the bladder. So with a lower spinal injury, I have what's called a neurogenic bladder, which means I retain urine. I can't let it go. So if my sphincter happens to relax, like somehow I've regained the ability when I'm terrified out of my mind, I will lose function of my bladder. Kind of like if someone's, and this is an awful example, but if someone's about to be murdered and they pee on themselves, like that is something that's happened. That's come back for me. So a part of me is like, well, I'll take it. Like that means I'm slightly closer to what a normal person would have. But so anyways, what this surgery could potentially do, if he were to do it, is it could give me sphincter control, which I don't have. So the emptying the bladder is one thing, but my sphincter, to be able to have more voluntary control of that, to empty and whatever, that could give me a better quality of life. Because I think a lot of people associate, and I'll just be clear, it's very, a lot of people associate spinal injuries with only walking. And when you're walking, you're healed and everything's great. And oh, maybe you limp a little, but it's fine, right? Everything's wonderful. And it's like, actually, no, like I spend hours on the phone with the medical company because they ration out how many catheters I get a day. Like, and then I have to argue with the insurance if they cover catheters, which I'm currently in the process of, certain plans don't allow for that. And so, and then ostomy, it's something that I've had to really wrestle with in terms of just dignity. Losing basic functions is a matter of dignity. And I know people, I think the thing too is with the ostomy is that I don't really fit in a category. I have, friends on social media who have Crohn's disease, but it's a completely different scenario when you were violated in such a extreme way. And as a result of the violation and the trauma, you have this system and you don't know if you'll ever be able to recover function enough to have it reversed. Although with a lower injury, the struggle would be more so with constipation than it would be with just pure incontinence. But it's really a faith thing. And actually, I do need prayers because my husband and I'm 35, he just turned 40, and it's getting to the point where we have to make a decision in a smart way about when we're going to start having kids. And there's probably going to be more risk for me. I did get approval from surgeons, to try to get pregnant, and the rods were taken out 3 years after the crash because they kept breaking, and then my bones miraculously healed and my spine was able to hold itself up. Sometimes I joke, so my nickname is the Beast. I joke that my body was just breaking the rods because I no longer needed them. So those are out. So, I mean, I have clearance in that sense, but in terms of kids, if I would need a year between ostomy surgery because they would literally have to do a full laparotomy again, open me up. Not like exploratory, but they'd have to open me up, reconnect, and then you'd have to see what kind of function I would have, what I need to do a bowel program, et cetera, et cetera. And I would need a year of healing between trying to get pregnant so basically Dr. Dumanian's technique of putting me back together, I was one of his most severe patients that he had with his technique. And although I have less mesh in my stomach and he says I should be fine, I have pain now. I can't imagine what it would be like with my stomach a lot larger. So he actually wants to take the mesh out, which is another crazy thing that I never thought I would ever hear. And so the idea is, okay, well, am I more afraid of not knowing and basically just staying in the comfort of what I know now? Or am I more afraid of the risk of having the mesh taken out and maybe having a better pregnancy, but then not knowing what the result's going to be in terms of incontinence for the bowels if you reverse the ostomy? And so I'm at a place now where I have to kind of make a decision soon. And it's probably the biggest faith decision I've had to make since I think like the actual prayer before the crash of like the doctors are, well, one specific doctor, the colorectal surgeon, did some examination, and his belief is that I'm not ready for reversal, but he also can't tell me 100% that I'm not ready. So it's one of those things where it's like I have to listen to my intuition, and my intuition is telling me that I have a choice, that I can make a choice, and I feel like God has my back. And so someone told me, they're like, Erin, when you think about the Israelites and how God had promised them this promised land, right? Like if your ostomy reversal is the promised land, don't let the spies who are going into the promised land talk you out of it because there's giants in the land, like don't let that scare you. So yeah, there's a lot of things coming up for me. The nerve surgery, we haven't bought our tickets yet because, a lot of stuff's going down in Texas, but we will be in an outpatient clinic and we will be kind of separate. And then with possible, if I'm going to pursue ostomy surgery, there could potentially be 3 to 4 surgeries this year.
Wow.
Gosh.
So yeah, I need lots of prayers. I haven't really, I wanted to share on social media about this decision, and it's very complicated because the surgeon basically said, Erin, this is probably going to be as bad as any of the other surgeries you've had. It poses a great risk. You'd be in surgery all day, removing mesh out of your stomach, putting parts back together. And then what if you don't like it? What if it's not the result you want, and your quality of life suffers.
Right.
For just keeping the colostomy. But I'm not a person who likes to be comfortable. I like to push the limit, and I like to experience life, and I like to try new things, and I like to take risks. If the outcome is worth it to me, it's worth the risk. So I've come a long way. It's still ongoing. God is amazing. He answered all of the prayers. My dad got baptized 2 months before I was married. And that was another prayer of like, I don't want to get married if my dad can't walk me down the aisle as a recommitted disciple. My best friend, she actually the night of the sepsis surgery wrote me a journal entry and was like, your faith has changed my life. I've never known someone who is as strong, as faithful as you. And I was about to throw away my Bible, but I didn't because you inspire me. And then I met my husband who wants to serve the poor, and he's just an awesome guy. And I feel like I've been able to share my story. There's a few news organizations who have shared it, the Daily Mail, WGN, Panagraph, and I'm hoping to share it more. And so one of the biggest, I don't want to gloss over this point, but one of the biggest elements of my story that unfortunately we did not film, we weren't able to have cameras in the courtroom, and I did not understand what it meant to petition for filming. But I went to court against the drunk driver, the offender. She was 22 at the time, and I won't say her name because I don't want to put her on blast, but I wasn't able to go for the first year. And then I went, the first time I went to court, I was in the wheelchair. And so I progressed from the wheelchair to the walker, to the cane, and then to nothing. But I didn't want them to see how much I had progressed, and not not to give her a sentence that would teach her a lesson. Because what I had been told was that she had zero remorse. And so although I had forgiven her for the initial act of driving drunk, because I felt that God had given me such a strong understanding, I had a really hard time forgiving her for her lack of remorse. And so I spent a lot of hours walking my dog as therapy, praying to God, because lack of forgiveness will eat you up inside. And it would have prevented me from moving on in my life, and it would have created a bitterness in my heart that I was not willing to hold on to. And so the day of her sentencing, I was able to share a victim impact statement. And I'm a writer, so it was 11 pages long.
Oh, nice.
And I wrote everything out, not because I wanted to throw it in her face, but because I wanted her to know exactly how her actions had impacted another person.
Mm-hmm.
And not just me, but like I was a physical victim, but there's like tons of emotional victims. People had their own trauma going through this that they kept from me because I was the center of attention. But, my best friend had to go to therapy to deal with how she felt about losing her best friend, the one who has been a personal trainer, the one who was on dance line, the one who, wore colors in her wardrobe and taught her how to wear colors and was living in sweatpants. Like, she had to go through her own grieving process. And the day of the sentencing, I read about all my surgeries. I've had 8 now. I had 4 initially at that time. And then I had a hernia surgery after that because the abdominal trauma, the plastic surgeon basically said, Erin, the seatbelt saved your life, but it sliced your body in half. Like I've never had a patient whose rectus was sliced in half. And you had the ostomy, and you had horrible abdominal trauma. Like when he had on me on the table to close me, the chief resident was like, this is crazy. Why are we doing this? Like, what are we going to do with her? Like I'm laying there unconscious, they put me out, and the chief resident was looking at the surgeon like, this is crazy. Why are we even in the OR right now? And I just give so much kudos to Dr. Dumani, because he was like, no, we're going to just start over here. We're going to see what we can do. And if we can close her at the end, that's great. And they just kept going until the end. They were like, she's done. And now it's 5.5 years later. And now he can go brag about long-term care because it's been so long, So he did a hernia surgery on me. Then my rod broke. They replaced it. Then it broke the next year, the other one. So they had to take it out. And then I had an IVC filter put in to prevent blood clots from the pulmonary embolisms to going to my heart to killing me. So then I had that removed. So I've had 8 surgeries total. And anyway, so I at that point, I just shared everything. Sorry, I'm jumping around a lot. But so I had shared everything. And then at the end of my victim impact statement, I offered forgiveness. And I said, and this was really difficult for me to offer forgiveness without her ever acknowledging what she had done. But I knew that that's something that I needed to do for myself and for my future, because I was getting married 5 days after this date to the love of my life. And I was like, I can't go into this next phase of my life holding on to hatred and bitterness and anger, and like, how is this going to serve me or serve anyone else? And so in front of the courtroom, in front of her, I said, you know, I forgive you, even though I don't think you deserve it, because Jesus forgave me and I didn't deserve it. And then I started to ramble, kind of off the page, some things I didn't write. And I basically told her, I said, you know what, you're beautiful despite the fact, you know, of what you've done. I said, but your beauty comes because God loves you and not because you get all dressed up and you go to bars and get drunk and you get attention from men. You're beautiful just because you have intrinsic worth. And I got off the stand and there was like wailing in the courtroom. And before I knew it, my mom, they were all crying. And then I went and I cried on Dennis's shoulder. And then they asked her if she wanted to make a statement. And I was pretty content. I had gotten to the point where I was like, you know what? She's never going to own up to this. I have to be okay with this. I have to move on. I forgive her. And she got up and she started sobbing and she said, you know, Erin, you're right. I'm going to go to jail for 18 months and I'll get my life back, but you'll never have your life back. And for that, I'm really sorry. And it meant everything to me. And so I felt after she apologized, the officer asked her to come and they were going to take her back into to custody. And I couldn't help myself. I jumped up and I ran into the courtroom and I said, can I hug you? And I hugged her and she was crying and I was crying. And it was the most healing, complicated, beautiful moment of my life. And then my mom was sobbing and ran over to her mom and they embraced. And then my dad embraced her dad. My fiance embraced her fiance. My sister embraced her brother. And her lawyer came over to me. And the thing is that I had forgiven her, but I've learned that forgiveness is completely separate from justice. Just because you forgive doesn't mean that the person should not be held accountable for their actions. And so I had prayed and I asked God, I said, God, whatever is going to make an impact on her the most, that's what I want. Whether that's jail time, whether that's not jail time, even though I really wrestled with that. They told me that she was a first-time offender. It's Cook County. She's going to get a slap on the wrist and she's going to go about her life. And I really wrestled with that because I'm like, literally, I'll never have my life back. Yeah, I'm a miracle patient, but like I've lost so much. And these things I have to reconcile. Even, you know, I had to have a conversation with my husband about our wedding night. Like, it's going to be different. I have partial and permanent paralysis. I have loss of sensation in half of my body. Like, you know, we have to talk about what this is going to look like. I can't go horseback riding or zip lining or the things that I would have wanted to do on my honeymoon. We can't do those things. You know, we have to be realistic. And so it was hard. It was loss. And I was faced with that loss. Every day on our honeymoon, every day today, I'm faced with that loss. Even when I make progress, it's like any progress is progress. Like I'm rejoicing about a toe moving more because it's progress for me, you know? And so her lawyer was advocating for boot camp. And that would have been 6 weeks of her like going and getting buff, I felt like. And after I read my victim impact statement, her lawyer came over and he apologized, I think, to my husband. And he said, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Like he didn't know how bad it was. And I'm like, you're defending someone for a crime without even knowing everything that the victim went through. And the fact that he had so much integrity to acknowledge that. And then he came over to me and he shook my hand. And I was just like, it was just the craziest day of my life. And so I have no negative feelings towards this woman. When I have a hard day, I don't think like, oh, you know, in my mind, I don't get angry. I just cope, I guess, with those feelings. And I mourn. And I think sometimes it's hard when I'm trying to explain to people 5.5 years later that I'm still mourning because it's an active living loss. So I can have a good attitude about it, but it would be unfair for me to say, oh, I'm past that. I'm, you know, everything's fine, because it's not. You know, it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to acknowledge that you have a range of emotions. It's okay to feel the emotion and then to move on from it, you know? And so I'm very honored that Jaime wanted me to come on the show and share my story, and that he acknowledged that it's it's something that I'm living with every day. And I've thought about it a lot. Even if I were to have a full recovery, which is virtually impossible for someone with spinal injury, it does not happen yet. I'm prayerful that someday it will. It doesn't change the time that I've lost. It doesn't change the trauma that I've been through. And so really reconcile. And then I feel like a lot of who I am has been formulated by what I've lost too. And so not allowing myself or other people to disable me more, because I am disabled. I have a disability, but that's not all that I am. Right. So
right.
It's been a lot of growth, a lot of soul seeking, a lot of, even today, I wanted to do so much more before the show, and acknowledging my limits. I have fatigue, I have pain, and it's a lot better than it was, but being okay that I can't do everything and I can't be everywhere. And, as crazy as it sounds, because of God and the way that he's moved through my story, I wouldn't change it. It doesn't make it easy to go through what I've been through, but I wouldn't change it. Was it still wrong for the girl to get in the car and drink and drive? Yes, of course, but I've reconciled that. So I don't live in that space where I think about, I could have done this differently that day and everything would be different. I don't live there.
Right.
Because I felt like I had a choice. I felt like God, by telling me something tragic was going to happen and me surrendering to it, that was my choice. It was surrendering to what I felt that he was showing me. Hey, Erin, like you would a child. Hey, if you want this cookie, then we have to do A, B, and C so that you can get this cookie, right? We have to go to the store. You have to pick out a cookie. You have to come home. Or maybe you have to be on your best behavior. Like, there's these things that have to happen. Mm-hmm. And with my story, I feel like that was what God was saying was, okay, I hear you. You want A, B, C, and D. That's going to happen. Then these things have to happen. And this is the only way to do it. So I'm at a place in my life right now where I'm working on a book called The Prayer, and I'm working on a documentary called Peeing is Overrated, The Untold Story of the Miracle Patient. And we've had a lot of bumps with that documentary, but I have a co-director named Jordan Campbell who is a lifesaver and like a brother to me. And this would not be possible without him. And so we're trying to, despite the pandemic, we're trying to gather all the footage together. And we actually do have a website that we're putting up very soon, which will be called Peeing is Overrated, I believe, .com, or maybe peeingisoverratedthefilm.com. And there will be places to donate if people want to donate towards, finishing the film. We're trying to get like a film package together. And the dream is to have our film be on Hulu or Netflix, to be in film festivals. And we really want to bring awareness to, the story is rooted in faith, right? Mm-hmm. The power of prayer, the power of perseverance, and the gift of forgiveness. And we want to bring awareness to walking paraplegics, which is a new term. And a lot of people don't know how to reconcile those, because if you're a paraplegic, usually people associate you in a wheelchair. Well, I'm here to tell you that paraplegia, the definition is partial paralysis in your lower, body, in your pelvic organs and your legs. And I still have paralysis in my pelvic organs and partially in my legs. So even though I'm walking, I still would be classified as a paraplegic. I've actually had MDs argue with me. I kid you not. Say, are you sure you don't just have peripheral neuropathy? I'm like, yeah, I have peripheral neuropathy, and go talk to my neurosurgeon, because you don't know what you're talking about. All due respect. But so yeah, kind of bring awareness.
So you're that patient.
To live. Yes. I have to advocate for myself a lot.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Definitely not anything wrong. I think we need to go over some of these comments, because there's some
some
good ones there.
Yeah,
no, you're fine.
We can go up to.
Go to the carry.
Here we go.
Here
we go. So, Andrew says, my brother had an ostomy for 6 months, and it was really a hard time for him and our parents, so totally understand that piece.
Yep, so, it's been 6 years almost for me.
Carrie says, that's like Forrest Gump when he broke out of his leg braces. That's amazing. She's talking about when your back
the rods.
The rods, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was.
Tim says, Do you get frequent surgery miles?
I'm
That's a good point, right?
My-
have a freaking surgery card. That's awesome.
Yeah, you need to have a punch card. It's like,
Yeah.
I get this one free, right?
Yeah.
The good news is, though, guys, with my insurance, this surgery would be paid for 100%.
Oh,
The nerve one
Lord.
down in Texas.
Yes, they told me that they not only got special permission, but they got approval and they're paying for it. So
Oh my
thank you,
gosh, that's
Jesus.
awesome.
that is
Linda says, awesome and amazing testimony. Definitely will keep you and your medical team in my prayers. Praise God for complete healing that is coming.
Aw.
Amen. Liza's here. She's saying, hi, Liza. Thanks for being so open and vulnerable, Erin. Praying for you as you continue the journey.
thanks, Liza.
Andrew, I can't even imagine. Forgiveness is a hard thing. If I stub my toe on my bed, I'm mad at my bed for weeks. So proud that you are able to show the love and forgiveness to this woman that God has shown to us.
Yeah.
Man.
It's
And then-
really
go ahead, Joseph.
Sorry, I'm about to say. I was like, it's really hard for people to separate, forgiveness from whatever the person or something like that. So I just have kudos for you for being able to do that, because if you don't, the only thing that it hurts is you, because I know that she eventually said sorry, but you were the one that was being punished for that because you were angry and it was building up in you. There was nothing happening to her. So that's why it's a lot for people to understand. It's like forgiveness doesn't mean that you forget what happened or that you just toss it to the wayside. It just
Yeah, or that it makes it okay.
Right,
Or
exactly.
even that you need to have a relationship with someone once, like a toxic
Right.
toxic person in your life. But
Right.
I think about how when Jesus said, like, my enemy became my friend, and I think that in that moment I literally felt like my heart was open for her in that way, where I no longer consider her an enemy, that I could consider her a friend. And we did talk about visiting her in prison, but by the time I called the warden and they asked her, I don't think she was ready to see me. And I hope that with how open I am about my faith, I hope that didn't turn her off in a way. But she did respond to the Panagraph article. She did have some answers to their questions, and she was very clear about her sobriety and also really being acknowledging and feeling happy about the forgiveness. Because I think on her end, I think there was a part of her that maybe had some sort of conscience, and I think that if I was in that position, I would have a really hard time knowing what I had done.
Right. Right.
And Erin, can I ask you if you know if she had what were her injuries? Just out of curiosity.
She had whiplash. That was it.
That's always the case. It seems like. Wow.
Yeah. She was like a noodle, I think, just not even, I
Right.
can't even remember. So it's actually kind of cool because I did have the lawyer subpoena the police cam, the body cam footage. I haven't even seen it for the documentary.
Oh.
Didn't want to show it to me. But then when WGN did the story about me meeting the firemen and thanking them, because I don't remember their faces, I don't remember who they were, and it was really important for me to like physically meet these people who were there with me that night and to thank them for what they did.
Mhm.
And I was able to see the video from Captured News while Paulie took the video. I was able to talk to him, and I was able to see the full footage that he took of that night. And when you do a 180, because most of the stuff I shared, it's from an angle. Well, when you do the 180 and you look directly head on to the car, like it is, I started sobbing. It was indescribable to see that because all the images, like I said, are slightly to the angle, so you don't see the full impact of what the car looks like. And it was awful. I mean, the car was basically crushing me. That's why they had to cut me out. And my physiatrist is a
Your what?
doctor. My
Oh,
doctor of physiatry. So he oversaw me at rehab, and I still see him for my medical supplies every year. I have to have him write prescriptions, but I'm such a curious person that I basically demanded that I see my my x-rays and MRIs and CT scans. So when I was in rehab, he let me wheel to the computer and he showed me my scan, and he said, Erin, your injury is very unique because the way that your spine reacted to the impact of the crash would be as if you were crushed from top to bottom, not head on.
Wow.
Because typically the vertebrae won't explode that way unless there's kind of like a crush injury. And so even that was, and I was like, you know what, if that kept me alive, then
Amen.
I want it to happen. So that's kind of weird, but okay, great. Like, sure.
So I think you're like me because I love medical shows and I like watching people get cut open, and I blood doesn't scare me, and I want to know the terms and stuff like that. So I bet you were like just amazed whenever you're looking at your x-rays. You're like, what is that? Tell me that. What is that?
I honestly, you guys, I was telling Jaime this yesterday. I'm like, man, if I wasn't 35, like I would seriously like, and maybe I will in the future, but I'm like, I should go to medical school. Like I should, like me. I should.
You're just throwing around the terminology. Like I was like, did she just throw that out there?
Right. Right.
Like we're supposed to understand that.
I was like, I need a dictionary. I'm gonna have to go back and look up on that because I just want to know how to pronounce it.
Forget.
I like, I got a friend who had blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Exactly.
I forget because I'm used to being the journalist, and then you're supposed to digest, what you're hearing from like the doctors so that people like the layman can understand. And I forget that I've done all this, like I've had all this personal experience and I've done all my research that I forget that now I talk like in those terms, and I forget
like a doctor.
Does it always make sense?
Like I imagine when the doctors are talking, Erin's like, she's listening, and when they say whatever, she's like, no, it's not. It's the other nerves. No, the whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, and they look at her like.
Unless they're my neurosurgeon, I've literally gotten into like debates with doctors about my spinal injury. And I'm like, how many hours did you have of neurosurgery neurology in your MP program? Because honestly, that's the opposite of what my neurosurgeon has told me. And he would know because he was inside my body.
Oh, wow.
He would know what nerve, where works what. He even told me, he said, Erin, because I asked him, I said, so am I L2, L3, or L4? Like, why do I have all these? He's like, it doesn't matter. The classifications don't mean anything. He's like, it's just because we as people have to understand something, but they don't mean anything. Like, technically, I would say you were at least an L3 and L2, which would mean my injury was even higher than how they have it recorded at RIC, which is at L4, which is pretty low. So I just got to the point where I'm like, you know what? This is why, like, things are the way they are. That God, he understands, but someone could have a similar impact in a crash like me and have a completely different injury or have a completely different reaction or response to their injury. Who knows? So
right.
It's very complicated. Even, yeah.
As much as I want to keep going, Erin, we do have to end.
Right, yeah.
Understand.
But before we end, I do want to give the two things. I'm going to give you some time to kind of just give a shout out to everyone out here and just share a personal message. It can be whatever you want to share. I will also let you know beforehand, I have already thrown up in the comments your Instagram for both of your Instagrams. Sorry, I don't use Instagram too much, so for both of those, I threw in your Facebook and your YouTube. Okay, they look a little funky, so I'll try to probably reformat them later if they stay funky like that.
They look good in regular chat. Our chat, they don't look like that.
Oh, okay, good. Never mind then. So then I can leave it alone like that. So with that said, I'm gonna give you the screen time. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a bunch of accounts. But so Peeing is Overrated, the film, is the official documentary Instagram page, and it's all work in progress. Like, I'm a work in progress. Our website hopefully will be done the next month or two, peeingisoverrated.com or peeingisoverratedthefilm.com. I cannot remember. My Living Fatigue Free is more of a lifestyle account that I talk about, updates on my recovery, whereas the Peeing is Overrated, the film, is more like the journey that I've been on. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has been involved in my story at all. I don't think I could possibly thank each individual enough, or the gratitude for all my surgeons, my doctors, my PCTs, the woman who would come in and wash the floors every day of the hospital room, like the lunch lady, all these people were so valuable to me during my recovery. My orthotist, my therapist, my sister and her husband who took me in and I lived with them, my friends, my family, the church, I've lived in Bloomington since the crash. I've lived here. I'm just very grateful, even for financial, emotional, spiritual support. And I hope whoever's watching who doesn't know of my story or doesn't follow me will follow me on whatever channel, whatever Instagram handle, whatever page you want, and support us. We're really trying to get the film done this year, and we're trying to figure out a way to do that. And just prayers about future surgeries, prayers about my book. As much as I love talking about my story, it's more traumatizing to write about it in a weird way. And so, I think there's also an emotional healing that I'm trying to go after this year as well, and kind of work through some of that trauma and really see what God has planned. I feel like He has more in store. But yeah, if there's anyone who is encouraged by me today, I have no problem sharing my story. I've spoken at high schools before with MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They're a great organization. I did share a link about a week ago if you want to join my team to walk like MAD. We are doing a virtual walk this year, not an actual in-person walk due to the pandemic. But if you want to support me, you can go to my Facebook page, Erin Rollins, and I have a link there to join my team. And you can go to your local park and walk with us that day. And we're really trying to, I've tried to be a member of MAD and support them to help end drunk driving, because it is a preventable crime and something that should not happen. So yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm really grateful that you had me on the show tonight, all three of you. And this has been a great experience. So thank you.
Oh, sorry. No problem. Thanks for coming on, Erin. It was been great. I mean, great is kind of a weird word to say, to be honest, right? It's one of those situations where the story is just, it's there, but hearing it come from you and your journey, that I think that's probably the great part. That's what makes it seem great, is like,
right,
you're still going. Like, it's not over, it's not done. So with that, we also have, we always ask our guests to give us a topic for a future episode. So with that in mind, do you have a topic for the three of us to cover for your future episode?
I've been thinking a lot, and I think that in today's current climate, we need some fun stories and like positive stories, maybe quirky stories. That's probably broad, but I think that if people have, or a guest has, kind of a fun story that would represent camaraderie or love or doing a good thing in your community or with another person, I think something of that nature, that would be a feel-good, unique type of story.
That's awesome.
I like it.
I like it.
We like it.
Put it in there.
Erin, I cannot just say that, I mean, usually I'm speechless. I mean, I can talk for days, but I mean, I just want to thank you for sharing your story. The power of forgiveness. I mean, your faith in God. I mean, there's just so many things, and just the things that we take for granted. Going to the restroom, we take that for granted. I mean, and I just want to thank you for sharing that. It just made a huge impact in my life with your story. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever it is that you put out. I'm going to read it. And thank you.
Yeah, you definitely have new fans.
Yes.
Yeah, you do.
I forgot to mention my blog on Chicago Now, but there's a link there. I haven't blogged in a while, but there's about 4 blogs that are connected to the crash and forgiveness and all of that. The forgiveness one is called "The Day I Hugged the Drunk Driver Who Almost Killed Me." It's a very long read, but it's worth it.
That's an attention-grabbing headline for sure.
Right.
I appreciate it, Sandy. I really do, and I'm really proud of you guys for putting together this show and just doing,
Oh, this old thing, we just kind of grabbed it out of the closet.
We do.
Kind of threw it on the screen, see what we could do. Thank you
It's
so
cool to
much.
see people live their dreams, things that they want to do. So
Awesome.
Stick around with us for just a couple more seconds, Erin. But for everyone else, I really hope you were all encouraged tonight. I know that we always talk about going in a positive and upbeat direction, right, guys? And
Yes.
but the topic that was given to us was someone who had to overcome obstacles, and I think both of those goals were met tonight. I really do feel that way. And so for those of you who stuck around, for those of you who are going to do the rewatch on this and have watched it all the way through, I'm happy that you stuck with us.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow we've got a great guy coming on. He is the cologne guy. He has a YouTube channel called That Cologne Guy, and he was one of our very first guests on the show.
Right.
So we're bringing him back for the intellectual dimension of wellness, and we'll talk more about that tomorrow.
During that time, and we can't wait to see what happens this time.
I know, and y'all know we were all smiles. We're like our faces hurt in that day.
I mean, it was kind of like we were with you, Erin. Like we were just speechless and listening to you. Like with this guy, we were just like, "What in the world?" Like when we were done, we were like, "What in the world? Who knew cologne could be so stinking interesting?"
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it really was.
No,
it was
It
like,
really was.
yeah. So come back tomorrow night to hear from the man himself, That Cologne Guy, and yeah. And as usual,
Remember to wash your hands.
for at least 20 seconds.
You filthy animals.
Good night.
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Oh wow,
That
Man.
was,
Erin, that
is a
was
story.
amazing.
That is awesome.
That is yeah.
Erin, I want you to know you're probably the least interrupted guest we've ever had.
Right, exactly. At least.
I was wondering what the questions were when they were coming, and then I was like, "Oh, are they just afraid to interrupt me?"
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we
Well,
were like
not
on the edge of
afraid.
our seats. I mean, this